Well, good advice that I received early on that stuck with me to this day is very simple but impactful. And it was just two words: you belong. And it was a colleague of mine, good friend, who said those words. And it meant so much because I was about to do something for the first time and I was nervous. And he said, "Don't worry about it. You got it. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have the knowledge, skills, and abilities. You belong." And that's what I needed to hear to charge forward and do the thing. So take that with you and just remember that next thing you're about to go for, or the next thing you're about to do, the big challenge, just remember that you belong.
Welcome back to another episode of the PR Style Guide with co-host Danielle Williams and Robin Newton, talking to women making strides in the PR, marketing, and communications industries and doing it with style. Now let's get into it.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the PR Style Guide podcast. We're excited to be here, as always, bringing you all amazing content, amazing guests, and we love continuing this conversation about comms, marketing with amazing women in the industry who are making strides. And so we're back for another episode. I'm Danielle Williams, here with my co-host, Robin Newton. Got it right this time. And we're excited. And so we do want to start off with, if you are not connected with us outside of this podcast, please, what are you waiting for? Get connected. So you can find us on Instagram at PR Style Guide. You can also, we have a Facebook page as well, but follow us on Instagram. And it would be great if you can also subscribe to our podcast and rate and review us as well. We would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback. And so, yeah, that is what we invite you all to do. And so with that being said, we're going to jump right into this conversation today. And I'm going to throw it over to Robin to introduce our guest.
Always excited when I get to introduce our guest, and tonight is no exception. Shannon Cross is a senior media relations specialist at Children's National Hospital with over 20 years of experience in sports, news, and entertainment media. She currently oversees PR for multiple hospital service lines and manages media opportunities for key partnerships and sponsorships, including those with Microsoft and the Washington Commanders. She previously served as the senior PR and marketing specialist for Ascension St. Agnes in Baltimore, Maryland, where she utilized her media expertise to enhance the hospital's public presence. Cross's career spans a wide range of roles, from on air reporter to behind the scenes producer. Most recently, she contributed as a writer and sports analyst for FOX5 DC. She also co anchored TV One's daily news program and reported for NBC Sports Washington and BET, covering major events such as the Marine Corps Marathon, the BET Experience, celebrity basketball game, and local team coverage, including the Washington Wizards, Washington Commanders, and Maryland Terps. Additionally, Cross worked at ESPN, where she interviewed sports icons like Magic Johnson, Serena Williams, and Tiger Woods, and covered prominent events like the NCAA Women's Final Four and the Women's College World Series. A former Division II collegiate tennis player, she combines her athletic background with extensive journalism experience, offering a unique perspective and current role in media relations. Shannon, welcome to the PR Style Guide. Do you get excited when you hear all that amazing stuff about yourself?
I was like, wait a second, she's still talking. When you get to be this senior, I guess, the bio keeps going at that point.
Love receiving the bios. I learned so much new stuff. From time to time, we have people on the show that I know already, like you, and I learn new stuff. I'm like, who knew she was a tennis star?
No, and I still play. I keep the racket in the trunk just in case. If anybody wants the work, then we can do that.
Okay. Love it.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to dive into this conversation. Shannon, yes, that bio, we have a lot to talk about. So I guess let's kick it off with our first question. When did you first fall in love with PR and communications?
Oh my gosh. So I'd have to say I fell in love with communications at a very young age. My mom used to have us sit on the couch. I have a brother and a sister. So she used to have us sit on the couch and just interview us. She worked in HR. So that was probably part of her, grooming us to be ready and prepared for these questions once we hit the job market. But it was a mix of that. And then my brother and I used to set up the video camera. And do you guys remember? I'm probably dating myself a little bit with this one. But do you remember Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach?
Absolutely.
Yes. So my brother and I would act like we were Robin Leach, interviewing these famous, happy people who were so rich and entrepreneurs and all this stuff. He'd be like, how and this mansion you have and did it. And so it really started at that age, just being super young, not knowing a whole lot, but I knew that as long as you had a camera rolling and a microphone, anything was possible. And so fast forward, now that you have resources like YouTube and TikTok, anybody can be a journalist. You can get out here and start interviewing people tomorrow if you want to. And I think that's the cool thing, that the option that people have today.
So this is a random question that I don't think we've ever asked anybody on this show.
Okay.
Does your brother work in journalism too? Yeah.
Actually, so we all ended up in the arts. My brother's a musician and my sister is a fashion stylist. So we all kind of ended up in, that industry, entertainment industry. Yeah.
That's cool.
That is very.
So, so tell us about your background. Where did you get started? Where'd you go to where'd you
Yeah, so HBCU grad here, went to Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was a broadcast journalism major, took all the classes, everything from, English to newspapers to digital media. I've always been a sports fan, so I even took sports broadcasting, and I thought at one point I might do like play by play for sports. I wasn't really sure. I knew I liked to talk and I could do that pretty well, but writing was also a passion of mine, even from a very young age, whether it was poetry, writing different pieces. I performed oratory pieces in different competitions growing up. So I knew broadcast journalism would probably be a good fit for me. And once I got into it, I just started cruising, and initially ended up getting my first job before I graduated at a local news station, NBC affiliate in Charlotte. And I was a news writer. That was my very first job. And so I was so excited just to be in the industry and get my feet wet early. But I credit a lot of that from having internships. Anytime I had downtime, I told you my mom worked in HR. Anytime I had downtime, I had an internship. And one of those internships was with ESPN, which happened to be locally in Charlotte. So I learned a ton from all the professionals there, everything from the events department to programming, production, a little bit of everything. And I used every little bit of that to pour into what would then become my career in journalism.
Cool.
So speaking of your career, your bio is expansive. Walk us through your career after graduating. Kind of walk us through.
Sure. So initially started writing for the local news stations, worked just about every shift under the sun. And so you can only imagine, sometimes it was coming in at 6 p.m. and getting off at 3 in the morning. Sometimes it was going in at 11 a.m. and getting off at 8. It just depended on which show I was working on. But when you're hungry and you're just getting in there, you're not getting paid a ton. You're really there for the experience and working your way up. And so started as a news writer, ended up going to a Fox affiliate shortly after that and becoming a producer, producing a 3-hour morning show, which was quite a beast. And that was during Hurricane Katrina, actually. So this
Wow.
was 2005.
And was that in Charlotte as well?
So, as you know, Hurricane Katrina happened in Louisiana, but a lot of those people who were displaced ended up
Mm-hmm.
to several nearby cities. And so we ended up, Charlotte ended up being a place where a lot of those people relocated. Some were in college at the time, and some
Yeah.
were having to transfer credits and get a job or housing and things like that. And so we were covering everything from the catastrophic hurricane to the fallout thereafter. And that was my very first producing job. And as you remember, it happened overnight. The hurricane hit overnight. So just devastation. a crazy experience for that to be my first time producing, but a learning experience nonetheless.
Absolutely, and to be a part of something that goes down in history is one of those major life events that we all feel like we were part of, whether we were in Louisiana or not. I actually was in Elon at Elon University at the time in North Carolina, so a lot of the students who were displaced came to Elon, including shout out to my senior roommate Kalila.
Mhm.
She was at Dillard during the time of the hurricane and then came to Elon and we met then. Yeah.
So that was definitely a time, but it got my feet wet early.
Mm,
Managing different parts, whether it be reporters live out in the field, editors, making those news decisions and creating that news judgment early, right? Knowing when to take something as breaking news, knowing does this lead the show or should this be in the B block or the C block? And I cherish those moments because I had to learn on the fly. And sometimes
mm,
as you guys know, that's when you learn the most. It's when you're in the thick of it. And so shortly after that, I had an opportunity to go to ESPN, and it was presented through my internship, the relationships that I made through my internship. And that first opportunity would be in programming at ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut. I had never been north of really Philadelphia, I think. So going to Connecticut was very out of the norm. I was a little like fish out of water. I had no family there, nothing, just a dream. And so at the time, obviously, I told you guys, big sports fan, going to ESPN definitely was dream job territory. So I said yes immediately and packed
mhm.
my things and went to Bristol, Connecticut. And so during the time I was there for about 9 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was able to pivot a few times while I was there. So I worked in programming where I was working on live events and things like that, very active, very close to what I was doing as a producer. And then I told you I had a love for writing, and I always have, that still do. And so that led me to wanting to move to more of a digital media kind of role. And this was around like 2008, 2009. The iPhone's out, digital media is really popping, social media is getting bigger and bigger. And I really wanted to make a pivot. And so I reached out to a friend. I said, hey, would love to shadow you, see what you do. And he currently worked in digital media at ESPN, working on ESPN.com. And I fell in love with it immediately. A job presented itself. I went out for it and I ended up getting it. So was able to pivot from a programming role to digital. That's not a normal thing. So to be able to
Mhm,
pivot, everybody's like, whoa, what do what were you able to do? How did you do that? And really, first, it was having various skills already, right? Having that writing background. I told you I love writing and just coming up with ideas, whether that's for TV, print, or digital. And at this time, we're really going through that big transition through the mid 2000s. So I was able to also work on social media and really push a need for integration of social media. So what we see now on the CNNs, Fox, no matter what channel you're watching, you always see a segment where they're featuring a tweet or a Facebook post or something of that nature. And that wasn't the norm for a very long time. But one thing that we learned pretty soon at ESPN was our sports fans are on social media and they're having a whole conversation on what at the time was called Twitter. And so, how do we tap into this untapped market? Well, we feature their tweets. That's how we do it. And so, I was part of that charge of just saying, hey, we have a whole swath of people over here that are having a conversation. We need to be where the cool kids are.
Mm.
And it was walking into offices and just presenting ideas and saying, we need to include this content. Uh,
I'm gonna say you're a trailblazer in that regard because, now everyone is doing that and it's been done now for years now, but
Yeah.
you never really think about who started that at a particular company. Like now it's part of
Norm.
ESPN. It's what we expect. It's the norm, right? But that's really cool that you were part of that
Absolutely.
process to make that a thing there.
and
Yeah.
and really it was just, it was a place that I like to be during sporting events. It was the unofficial second screen. You're
Yeah.
watching TV
Yeah.
on your you're watching TV, but then you also have your phone in your hand.
Hmm.
And
And
that
you're laughing at the tweets that come out or whatever. Yeah.
And so that was an experience. And I thought, you know what? I don't know if everybody else knows that this is what's happening. So that ended up turning into an opportunity to then be a social media correspondent. And that was my last position at ESPN. And I was doing that in addition to my digital media responsibilities because, again, just being passionate about what I do and actually being a sports fan, I thought it would be a great way to contribute. Started doing that, and that grew to me being the first ever social media correspondent for the NCAA Final Four.
Very cool. So what brought you to DC? Because you're in the DC area now. Was it work?
Yes. So after getting on air, that led me to wanting to do more of that, like many people. And so I started pursuing on air roles and I accepted a position with TV1. And that's what brought me to DC as a news anchor. So did that for a little bit, and then I really missed sports, so I got back into sports, started doing sports reporting locally, covering the local teams as you mentioned off the top, and then working at Fox5 DC. So that's kind of my on-air reporting. I was freelancing with BET and NBC Sports Washington as well. So that's kind of my on-air journey in DC.
All the work that you've done is amazing and
Yeah.
necessary, right? As women who work in PR and journalism, we understand the necessity for what we do. But now you're doing something that is even more rewarding in some regards. Tell us about your current role.
For sure. Yeah. So how this came about, I was working at Fox5 DC in the pandemic, and we started working remotely like a lot of people. And, I started thinking about some of the skills that I hadn't tapped into since my time at ESPN, where I was managing major projects and different entities. And I said, it would be really cool to get back into like the comms and working on digital media, working on social media, serving as a spokesperson. Maybe there's a role where I could be in a hybrid situation where I'm working for a corporate entity, but maybe I'm the spokesperson on TV. I didn't know what that looked like, but I started putting my feelers out just to see what was available and if that was even possible, right? Because again, pivoting is hard. People make it seem like it's so easy, but it does take work. And you've got to be able to know how to showcase your skills, how to make someone understand that what you're doing as a producer or a writer translates to PR. And so my first opportunity came at Ascension St. Agnes in Baltimore. They also were remote, so that helped in the transition. I didn't necessarily have to make the drive to Baltimore every day. And so that was my first stint in PR, and it was a hybrid role of PR and marketing. So I got a chance to do a little bit of something different every day, which I loved because no day was the same. As you know, in TV, no day is the same. It's whatever's going on in the news, and you just roll with it. But I learned to enjoy the coordinated chaos. I still do, and I tend to think that I thrive in it. So PR
Coordinated chaos.
naturally.
I love that, by the way. Coordinated chaos. I'm gonna use that. I love
Me too.
You're like, it's crazy, but like I get it, and I know how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Zenyo.
No, I was just gonna say there's so many things, Shannon. Wow. So I was gonna ask. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robin.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think you hadn't gotten to where you are now. You were still at Ascension, right, in Baltimore. So how'd you get to? Because now you're in a different role, correct?
Right. So Ascension was my first PR stint. And then after a few years there, decided, I wanted to look for another role. Position presented itself at Children's National Hospital, which was much closer to home. And I thought, you know what, this is a great fit. And so I went out for it. And here I am at Children's National. I also thought that it would be great to really hone in on the PR aspect of what I do. And as you noted off the top, my title now is media relations. And so I am strictly PR media relations. I do work on our partnerships as well, but it's from a PR perspective. Marketing was fun, but sometimes if you know what you want to do, why not? Just go 1000% in on what you want to do. I love that this position gives me that opportunity.
Now, in your
So
current
do you
role,
oh go ahead. I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say in your
We both have so many questions. We're like, hold on.
love it. I love it. I was gonna say, so you mentioned being a spokesperson. Is that something that you were actually you stepped into at Ascension, or is that also what you're doing at Children's National as well, doing the PR side, but also being that spokesperson, you're speaking to the media? Or are you like writing talking points for leadership or both?
In my current role,
In either. I know you mentioned starting at Ascension, so I don't know if in either.
for the most part, so we had a very lean team at Ascension. We had a director. I was the only PR person, even though I was hybrid. And then we had a social media lead. So it was a mix of me sending a statement, whether that be via email or saying it verbally, and then also our director. But our director was definitely the main voice for us when and if we needed him to be. And then also our president. So sometimes it's not like a PR person coming out front saying, our statement is da da da. Sometimes it's the president of your organization, the CEO that's saying, whatever those talking points are that we've developed for them. And then in my current role, we are a much bigger organization. So we have a PR team that is split up by service lines. So depending on, whether it's nursing or ortho, our sponsorships and partnerships, those are some of the things that I work on. And so I work closely with those doctors. I work closely with our nurses and develop ideas of things for them to talk about. Or if there's a awesome patient story, how can we tell this story to the media? And then of course, anything information wise, that our number one function, I think, is informing the public. And right now, infectious diseases is a big thing that we're dealing with constantly. Seems like every day there's a new one, right? And so it's how can we inform the public and make sure that they make the right decisions based on information and resources they have.
I'm going to spill the beans only because you and I follow each other on social. So,
Okay.
some of the cool things that Shannon gets to do, just so that our viewers know, is when the Washington Commanders go to Children's Hospital to meet with the children. Those are the kind of things that Shannon is coordinating. Or when the president of the United States decides to go, and Shannon is part of that team who leads the charge in those type of events. So really cool opportunities, and I love to see the work that you're doing in that regard. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's awesome.
I just started at Children's almost a year ago. So this is my first time being there during a presidential visit. But the current sitting president always comes to visit with the first lady and they read to the kids around Christmas time. So it's just such a fun event. Secret Service, everything is there. So it's highly, secure. But it's something that the kids and really the staff and everyone look forward to every year. The Commanders partnership is one that's a favorite of mine as a sports fan, gotta say. We recently had a really cool patient story that was published by ESPN. Quarterback Jaden Daniels connected with one of our cancer patients and granted her a special wish around Christmas, got her 2 tickets to a game and sideline passes to watch them practice before the game. And it was just so sweet. Everything was captured by ESPN cameras. And then it aired during the playoffs. As you know, the Commanders went pretty deep into the playoffs. So it was just so cool to see her story told on ESPN. And she's still fighting. She's a warrior for sure. But it's just so great that Jaden created that moment for her as a lifelong fan. Creating moments like that are so rewarding.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask the question, which is probably dreaded. What do you like better, working at a news station, or do you like working on the private PR side more? Or do you like them both equally?
I have a colleague that recently wrote a write-up about me here at Children's. And it's so hard talking about yourself. It really is. I mean, I know I'm doing this podcast right now, but in preparation for that, we were chatting and, during that conversation, she said, you know what, you've had so many different eras. And I was like, I like that. And I'm going to borrow that. And I really feel like this is a different era. So it's not like I have a favorite child, but it's just a different era. Journalism, doing that, obviously that's my first love. Um, did it for about 20 years and I learned a ton. And I love that I can share that knowledge now with doctors who don't have media experience. I can sit on a Zoom with them and coach them through how to do an interview virtually or how to do one in person and talking points and things like that. Like it's a different experience. So I look at it as just another layer or a different era in my journey throughout communications.
That a
Yeah.
different era. And like you said, the skills that you brought to this role are, I'm sure, helping not just you, but your entire team, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shane, I did have a follow-up question. Just throughout your career, you were innovative, you were courageous and bold, even to do be like the first social media ESPN correspondent or just other things. So, and sometimes we have younger viewers and we talk about how whether it's imposter syndrome or not always being confident in yourself, but you obviously had that confidence. Well, let me not say obviously. So I want to ask you, was it just that you were young and passionate and you were like, why not? I'm here. I'm going to, just mention this, or were you nervous as you were doing it? Or, I would just love to kind of tap into that because I do feel like there is this when you're younger sometimes, or just having lacking confidence being new in a role, being new in something, but you did that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's one realizing that who you are is valuable. No matter where you are, what organization, and how old you are, what you bring to the table matters. And you wouldn't be at the table if it didn't, right? So they hired you to this organization, no matter what it is. If you think that TikTok would be a good platform for people to use, obviously controversial things involved with TikTok currently still. But, it is a platform where you can grow exponentially. It is a platform that is like a micro YouTube where people can learn how to be a plant mom in 30 seconds. Like I can go and buy, a plant and take care of it, repot it and all the things. I may still kill it because I don't have a green. That's just me. But at least the TikTok girlies can teach me how to do it and I can feel like I did it in my mind. And so it's just about taking the chance. And if you believe in something, speak up. Have a plan, get your bullet points together. Don't just willy nilly, present a plan or a solution and there's no direction. Make sure that your idea comes with, facts, numbers if you have them, examples, just full, disclosure. Not everybody was on board. Even though I was able to be a social media correspondent for ESPN at that time, not everybody wanted that kind of content on their platform. And so while the women's college World Series and women's college hoops were interested, other sports were not. And that's fine. If you don't want to tap into what's cool and what people are currently doing right now, that's on you and that's a choice. But the fact of the matter is that the conversation was happening there and we were able to capitalize on it for those two sports in a way that wasn't done previously. So believe in yourself and charge forward. That's my best advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a professional mentor? And if so, how did you select that person?
It's funny. I have quite a few mentors, and I feel like my mentors have kind of selected me, if that makes sense. When I went to ESPN, I was 22. I was pretty young. And so it felt like grad school. Most people are pretty young when they get to ESPN, and, you're in the middle of nowhere. You may not know people and things like that. And so a lot of times you are kind of just picking that person up next to you and saying, let me teach you, youngin', how to do this thing, or let me coach you into how to be a better writer. Let me teach you how to be a better reporter. Let me introduce you to the players at the table where you'd like to sit, right? I remember someone asking me if I knew what a P&L was. And I was like, what? And that had nothing to do with what I did at the time. It, it's pushing you to grow. It's pushing you to understand that even though you do PR, you need to understand what your foundation does. You need to understand what marketing does. You need to understand who the head of blah 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 is or what your competition is doing. Don't just be in that vacuum mentality where you're just paying attention to your own email inbox. Talk to some people, get out, touch grass, experience life, and remember that the more that you can experience around you and the more knowledge that you can soak in, it's only going to make you better at what you do.
Absolutely.
And follow the money.
Absolutely.
Follow the money for any industry. Follow the money because the decision, that's why a
I
PM.
love that you say that. I love that you say that because sometimes people feel guilty about that. But I mean, we're not in this for our health either.
But I mean, in terms of, I'm sorry, when I said follow the money, also in terms of the decisions that businesses make, like follow the money.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Where investments are made, where they are, taken
Yeah.
away, things like that. It's important to
And
understand.
and that's even internally within your network. Look and see how your organization is moving, what they're putting money and resources toward. And that'll give you an idea of what maybe your next move needs to be, even internally within your organization.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
So let's switch gears a little bit. We love talking fashion.
Oh,
Danielle, did you have anything before we hop over into fashion a little bit?
I did. I feel like because
Go ahead, go ahead.
of the recent sector of work that you've done, we do have this question now. We actually don't ask many guests, but do you have any tips for crisis management? Have you ever had to deal with that?
Mm,
Hurricane Katrina when you were fresh on the scene, and then in places like children or healthcare. So I would love to just kind of get your thoughts on that.
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
yeah. Crisis management is key, right? It's not just all about media when it comes to PR. Crisis management is something more than ever we're dealing with today, right? So the question is, how do you approach it? So if you're new to PR or trying to understand, like, where do I even start? One thing that I tend to use, I actually borrowed from my journalism days, and it's looking at the 5 W's: the who, what, where, when, why. And that's really just understanding first, what is the crisis? Some people are so busy trying to, okay, what is our response going to be? And what is it? What is the crisis? Who does it impact? What do we lose if we don't say anything? What do we lose if we say something? Do we put a target on our back? Is, someone else going to have to make another statement? Are we going to have to retract? These are the things you need to think about, right? So the 5 W's, and then you can think about the how to respond after you determine what the answer to those 5 W's is. And then from there, I would also suggest that people look at the human factor. And I try to do this every day in interactions with people, just in the office, with patients. Always remember the human factor, but also in PR and crisis management, it's so key. We've seen plane crashes recently. We've seen people losing their jobs. We've seen all kinds of things. And while the headline may say one thing, the human factor may be a sub headline. And you need to determine as a PR person what that sub headline is and how do you maybe tap into that or tell that story or talk to that person. And remember that our words matter. And so consider that, our hearts are with the victims, we're thinking of you, da, da, da. Like those things are important and they really make a statement that may come off cold, warm, to say the least. And so that's where I start with crisis management. Have I had to deal with any? Yes. I can't talk about anything currently that we're managing, of course, but in the past, I've dealt with all kinds of things, including office domestic situations. And the key is just, again, gathering your facts, making sure if it does involve the police or someone dying or anything like that, just making sure that next of kin is always alerted first, that you're not confirming anything that someone doesn't have a name for, that the police haven't already confirmed, things like that. It's really about going back to the tenets of being a good PR professional and just knowing that less is more. You don't need to write a paragraph as a response or a statement. And sometimes you don't need to make a statement at all, depending on who you are or what happened. But really just having that discernment and knowing what to do.
That was great.
We've talked about this along the same lines. We've talked about this in the past, having to pivot when you plan to do something and a crisis happens. not putting out that statement on that day because it might seem a little insensitive or it completely would be overshadowed by this situation or whatever. I'm sure you've had to deal with some of that too, where you're like, nope, 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 not, let's not announce that today.
Mhm.
Yeah, and anytime there's a tragedy, especially if it happens locally, please don't put out that post on LinkedIn. Please don't ask for money from your foundation. Like, just certain things, it's like, let's take a beat. Maybe it's a couple days, maybe it's 24 hours, maybe it's a week. Um, but just think about, again, the human factor. And remember that people are living their daily lives and just kind of scrolling. And if they see something that's jarring or insensitive, that can really leave like a bad stain on your organization. The California wildfires is a great example. We're currently, I think, at the end of award season. And I know a lot of like the Grammys and the Oscars, we're trying to figure out, how do we do this when literally homes were burnt down just like a month ago? People are trying to figure out their lives. And so they had to scramble to figure out, how do we do this? Do we postpone? And so it's just about thinking about that human factor. And sometimes it does mean you have to cancel your event.
Yeah. Even with the wildfires, there was so many reminders, at least in the different places where I look for PR related things and just trends and things that I should be on top of as a public relations professional. Just tons of reminders. Do not send that press release, that pitch to any reporter in California, period. And I was like, noted, noted, noted.
Right.
Sometimes you don't even know if that reporter is in California, because so many people are remote now. It just isn't in press releases at all.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But definitely, if you know that that person works for the LA Times, you better hold off.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't care about your event right now.
Time. Go ahead. Fashion.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Let's talk fashion. So, how would you describe the role that fashion has played in your professional brand?
That is a great question. I feel like it can be so controversial as women sometimes, what we wear. And that includes our clothing, hair, jewelry, everything. And for the most part, since most of my career has been spent in journalism, it's been very conservative. I'll say that. Nothing out of the norm, pretty standard stuff. But I love a blazer. I'm not going to lie to you. I love a blazer at all times. I love a cardigan. I have one on right now, little chunky cardigan, all about jewelry. Now that I have short hair, I have to have earrings on or else I feel naked. Even makeup, makeup is something that I don't think we talk about enough. And as some of us don't like to wear makeup, but I love a good lip. Whether it's an orangey kind of pink that I have on now, a pinky pink, a nudie pink, it doesn't matter. I have 1,000 lipsticks, so I'm okay with that. And
Me too. Guilty.
you gotta have variety. And sometimes it's a matte, sometimes it's a gloss, sometimes it's, a balm. All of it. I'll take all of it. And I can never get enough. And so I love a blazer. I love suits, also neutrals. Another thing I have on. For some reason, I love white, cream, tan. I, I just gravitate toward it every time. My sister tells me, stop it. Like, it's okay. You can choose color. It's okay. You can choose color. And so I do try to choose color. And funny enough, I get compliments when I do wear color. So she might be onto something. But I'd say my overall, like a sorry,
What
what'd you
was
say?
that, Danielle?
I was just saying your neutrals are part of the Shannon Cross brand. That's your brand.
Okay. You know what? See, I like that. It's part of like the classy, sporty chic. And so now I think this is more of a post pandemic thing, but I love a good sneaker with a suit or with slacks. And so it could be a white sneaker, Vejas, whatever. I love it all. J's, shout out to the Jordans. My husband got me Jordans. I love ones, I love threes, I love 11s, and I will wear those, especially on days, PR people, we are on our feet at all day, sometimes working events, and you got to be comfortable. So if I have on a suit and J's, don't judge me.
I
We're
love a
famous
suit
over
and
here.
J's and
Yes,
sneakers in general. It's
we're
such
famous
a vibe.
over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love heels, but I'm
Yes,
becoming more of a sneakers girly too.
for sure. I'm 5'2", so
Me too.
I came out of the womb.
Me too. All three of us are 5'2". Wow.
We're fun size. That's what I like to say. We're fun.
Yes.
Yes.
Heels are a must, but we have the option for sneakers when needed.
Small but mighty.
I love that.
I love it. Okay. So we talked about fashion. That is one of our favorites. So I do have another Shannon. I said not Shannon. Robin, did you have another fashion question? So I was curious,
Floor is yours, friend.
how do you consume news, Shannon? Being someone who again was a front facing reporter, now you're on the PR side. How do you consume news?
I am an information junkie. Okay. To the point where I need to turn the TV off. I need to take Kendrick's advice and just turn the TV. I don't just want to hear the news. I want to hear the different perspectives. So I'm the person that, wants to watch it, 3, 4 different networks talk about the same thing, right? I'm still reading online news articles, obviously consuming social media, looking in the comments, watching the TikToks, because that's where the conversation is happening now. That's where people are taking what is reported on the news and saying, "Did you guys see this? Well, let's fact check, or let's dive into this." And they're pulling receipts like they're journalists, and I'm like, "Wait a minute!" So I'm tuned in to season 2, episode 5 of this girl's TikTok because she's so, a lot of these people are very knowledgeable, but don't necessarily have the job as a 9 to 5, if that makes sense. And so just really consuming media from all aspects. Um, it's a daily thing. It's not a chore. I enjoy it. And I think the key for anyone starting out, and really at any level, is just to stay curious. Stay
Mm.
curious, keep learning. If you don't know something, YouTube is available. There are 1,000 books out there. There are mentors. There's so many different resources that you can tap into. And the key is just to stay curious and never think that you know everything.
Speaking of resources, do you have any resources that you would suggest for the newer people starting out in this business? Whether it's books or podcasts or websites, anything along those lines?
Yeah. So when I first started out, NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, was a very good organization to be a part of. Of course, they embrace students and professionals once you're in the workforce. And while it's catered to journalists, I do think there's a lot of value for PR professionals as well, because you can meet the people that you're going to pitch to. So if you don't already have those connections, that is a pro tip. That's a place where you can introduce yourself, say, "Hey, I am new." Embrace where you are. I don't think you necessarily have to fake it till you make it, like some people say. You can say, "Hey, I'm new to this business. I'd like to connect to people in this particular industry." Let's say you're in health PR, so you want to connect with more health journalists. Great. Tell them that. Tell them that you're new to it and that you're trying to establish contacts. And maybe that person isn't a health reporter, but they know the person that is. So then they connect you. It's just about putting yourself out there and making that connection. Also, currently, I'm a member of PRSA. They do have local chapters. So that's a great way to get to know your fellow PR pros. And coincidentally, there are a lot of former journalists too. So you see some familiar faces. And there's plenty of workshops and things like that too, and chats, virtual conversations. And it's just a great place to also find jobs. So if you're looking for a new role, they do have job boards and opportunities to connect for mentors as well.
I know Danielle has been to a couple of our PRSA events.
Yes, well, I'm a new member, so I
Okay.
joined in September. Yeah, so I'm excited.
Are you with the Capital chapter or you are? Okay, same.
We all have to connect at an event. I'll have to come to
Yeah.
one of y'all's events.
Yeah, they do all kinds of stuff, even happy hours and all kinds of things. So it's great.
I love that. Awesome.
Well, Shannon, you have dropped so many gems. I've loved learning about your career, all that you're doing. And I feel like you've already given such great advice, but I'm still going to ask as we wrap up, what's the best piece of advice that either you've been given or something that you want to leave with our audience as some great advice?
Well, good advice that I received early on that stuck with me to this day is very simple but impactful. And it was just two words: you belong. And it was a colleague of mine, good friend, who said those words. And it meant so much because I was about to do something for the first time and I was nervous. And he said, "Don't worry about it. You got it. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have the knowledge, skills, and abilities. You belong." And that's what I needed to hear to charge forward and do the thing. So take that with you and just remember that next thing you're about to go for, or the next thing you're about to do, the big challenge, just remember that you belong. You're there. And, this is really just the beginning of what you can accomplish.
It's awesome.
Wow.
I love that.
That was a
I need that like on a t-shirt.
Seriously. It's like imposter syndrome and all that stuff. I know you mentioned that earlier, Danielle. And it's like, nope, you belong. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I understand why when I asked you that question, you were confident. You belong. I mean, that would make me feel like I could run through a wall. You belong. Like,
we're all human, different titles, but we're all human. So bring that value to the table.
absolutely.
Well, we love to wrap up with the lightning rounds,
Uh-oh.
and we'll ask you a question,
Oh,
this or that
hold
question.
on. That one.
It's easy.
Okay.
Easy peasy, easy peasy. This is the easiest part of the podcast.
Right.
Coffee or tea?
Ooh, tea, matcha.
Matcha tea, okay.
Mac or PC?
Mac. All day.
Early bird or night owl?
Can I say both?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I have range. I say both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fall or spring?
Fall. Shout out to the Libras. Fall baby right here.
And we should have guessed with your love for neutral colors.
Is that a Libra thing? I didn't know.
No, a fall thing.
Yes. It's my favorite time. Clothing, the weather, football.
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah, you can layer. I love fall fashion.
Me too.
Black
Is it on me?
or blue suit? You prefer black suit or blue suit? I know you say you love suits.
Blue. I love a navy suit. Yeah, because black is expected, but blue is like, blue is you mean business. I like
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Beach or mountain?
beach.
Extrovert or introvert?
Extrovert. Yeah.
Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram, Facebook. It's a difficult relationship. It's the same company technically, right? I mean, but I guess Instagram.
It's a very different audience though, and it's a very different relationship, different audience. It's not for everybody. Both, either one of them. And it's interesting. Those who love Instagram don't necessarily have the best relationship with Facebook, and vice versa. Yeah.
So, as a follow up, LinkedIn, X, or TikTok?
Today, TikTok.
Okay.
TikTok again because you can learn so much.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn so much there. Shout out to Hillman. What was it? Hill Talk. Hill Talk that is no longer. But yeah, that's a great platform. And LinkedIn's cool too. I love LinkedIn for professional.
LinkedIn has grown so much, man. I mean, the way it used to strictly just be about employment and people featuring their professional selves, but now it's its own social media in itself. Yeah.
And I love that it can be used for thought leadership. So that's huge.
Samantha Jones or Olivia Pope?
Ooh, Olivia Pope in a neutral coat.
That you added that. Stay true to the Shannon Cross brand. Embrace it. Embrace it. All
Yeah,
right.
we might know the answer to that last one already, but Danielle, ask it anyway.
Yes. So, heels, sneakers, or flat?
Heels.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a girl after my heart. I did say I love sneakers. Heels are my first love. They always.
Heels definitely first love, but now I know how to work those J's in there. So we
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
absolutely. Shannon, we are so happy that you could join us. Please share with everyone how they can stay connected with you.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram at Miss Crossy and basically Miss Crossy everywhere. I keep it consistent.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You dropped so many gems, and we appreciate you joining us and sharing with us your wisdom and your background.
Of
Yes.
course. This was so fun. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, everyone. So that is it for this episode. We can't wait to see you back here next time. So we'll see you in the next episode of the PR Style Guide.